Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. In a development that could reshape the Middle East, armed opposition groups have overthrown Bashar al-Assad in Syria following a lightning 12-day offensive. Assad has resigned and fled to Russia, where he's been granted political asylum. Assad's family had ruled Syria with an iron grip for over half a century. Thousands of Syrians living in exile have poured back into Syria, while tens of thousands of prisoners held by the Assad government have been freed. At the Sadnaya prison in Damascus, rescue workers are now trying to access underground cells at the site, which have been described as a human slaughterhouse. The uprising was led by Hayat Tahrir al-Shams, or HTS, a Turkish-backed group listed as a terrorist organization by the United States and the United Nations. Members of the group spoke Sunday after seizing Syria's state television.
In the name of God, the most gracious, the most merciful, by the grace of God Almighty, the city of Damascus has been liberated. The tyrant Bashar al-Assad has been toppled, and all the unjustly detained persons from the regime's prisons have been released.
A deal has been reached to allow Syria's Prime Minister, Mohammed Ghazi al-Jalali, to remain in his position to oversee the state's institutions until a transition government is formed. Many Syrians across the globe held celebratory rallies to mark the fall of Assad. Sabri Shikou took part in a rally in London.
We are going towards democracy and building a new Syria with a new system, democratic system, and we will depend on society and establishment, and not to the single regime who control every part in our country.
But many questions remain as to what will happen next in Syria, which has been devastated by 13-year civil war that's been fueled in part by numerous foreign countries, including Russia, Iran, the United States, Turkey, and Israel. The UN Security Council will hold an emergency meeting today on Syria. The UN Syrian envoy, Geir Pedersen, has called for an inclusive transitional government to restore a unified Syria.
All armed actors on the ground maintain good conduct, law and order, protect civilians, and preserve public institutions. Let me urge all Syrians to prioritize dialogue, unity, and respect for international humanitarian law and human rights as they seek to rebuild their society.
Israel responded to the uprising in Syria by invading and seizing part of Syria's Golan Heights in violation of a 1974 agreement with the Syrian government. Israel also bombed a number of areas, including a Syrian airbase and weapons depots. The United States carried out dozens of airstrikes inside Syria, targeting areas held by the Islamic State. Meanwhile, in northern Syria, Turkish-backed armed groups have seized the city of Manbij, which had been controlled by U.S.-backed Syrian Kurdish forces. We'll have more on Syria after headlines. In news from Gaza, an Israeli attack on Rafah killed at least 10 Palestinians who'd lined up to buy flour. In a separate attack, Israel struck a home, killing 9 members of the same family in the Burej refugee camp. Most of the victims were reportedly women and children. On Friday, an Israeli strike in the Nuseirat camp killed at least 20 Palestinians, including at least 6 children and 5 women. Survivors had to be pulled from the rubble.
There was suddenly an explosion. This was not an explosion, this was a tsunami. Like you see, it took not only one house, but many. There was fire and flames, flames that burned us. They burn us, they damage us, they cut us in pieces. There were bodies in pieces. I was pulled from under the rubble yesterday, and I have stitches in my head.
Meanwhile, the head of the Kamal Adwan Hospital in northern Gaza is warning the lives of more than 100 patients are at risk after Israeli attacks cut off the hospital's supply of electricity, oxygen, and water. On Friday, Israeli troops stormed the hospital compound. President-elect Donald Trump joined world leaders in Paris this weekend as France celebrated the reopening of the Notre Dame Cathedral 5 years after a devastating fire. Trump met with French President Emmanuel Macron and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. After the meeting, Trump wrote on social media, quote, "Zelensky and Ukraine would like to make a deal and stop the madness. There should be an immediate ceasefire and negotiations should begin," he said. Meanwhile, on Saturday, Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin announced a new $1 billion military aid package for Ukraine that includes drones and ammunition. Austin spoke at the Reagan National Defense Forum in Simi Valley, California.
I'm proud to announce today the commitment of a new Ukraine Security Assistance Initiative package worth nearly $1 billion. Now, that package will provide Ukraine with more drones, more rockets for its HIMARS systems, and more support for crucial maintenance and sustainment. And that brings the total of U.S. security assistance committed to Ukraine since February 2022 to more than $62 billion.
President-elect Donald Trump is vowing to pardon rioters who took part in the January 6th Capitol insurrection on his first day in office. Trump made the comment in an interview with NBC's Kristen Welker on Meet the Press.
Yeah, I'm going to look at everything. We're going to look at individual cases, yeah.
Okay.
But I'm going to be acting very quickly.
Within your first 100 days, first day?
First day.
First day.
Yeah, I'm looking first day.
Can issue these pardons.
These people have been there, how long is it, 3 or 4 years?
During the interview, Trump also said former Republican Congressmember Liz Cheney and other members of the House January 6th committee, like Benny Thompson, should be jailed.
So you think Liz Cheney should go to jail?
For what they did.
Everyone on the committee, you think
I think
should
everybody
go to jail.
anybody that voted in favor.
Are you going to direct your FBI director and your attorney general to send them to jail?
No, not at all. I think that they'll have to look at that, but I'm going to focus on drill, baby, drill.
Trump also vowed to end birthright citizenship while falsely claiming the United States is the only country in the world to have such a policy.
You've promised to end birthright citizenship on day one. Is that still your plan?
Yeah, absolutely.
The 14th Amendment, though, says that, quote, all persons born in the United States are citizens. Can you get around the 14th Amendment with an executive action?
We're going to have to get a change. We'll maybe have to go back to the people, but we have to end it. We're the only country that has it.
South Korea remains in a state of political crisis nearly a week after President Yoon Suk-yeol shocked the nation by declaring martial law before revoking it after national outcry 6 hours later. On Saturday, an effort to impeach Yoon failed after lawmakers from his ruling People Power Party boycotted the vote. Earlier in the day, Yoon apologized to South Korea while agreeing to shorten his term and hand over some power to his prime minister. But supporters of the opposition criticized the deal. One lawmaker called it, quote, illegal, unconstitutional, second insurrection, and a second coup, unquote. Authorities have also placed a travel ban on the president, who's under investigation for committing treason. On Sunday, Yoon's former defense minister was arrested. The UN High Commissioner for Human Rights has accused the leader of a powerful armed group in Haiti of killing as many as 184 people in the Cité Soleil area of Port-au-Prince. Most, if not all, of the victims were elderly residents. According to one Haitian human rights group, the head of the Wharf Jeremy gang ordered the killings because he believed practitioners of voodoo had sickened his child. In Ghana, celebrations broke out in the streets as former president and opposition candidate John Dramani Mahama declared victory in this weekend's presidential election. The ruling party's candidate, the current vice president, Mahamadou Bawumia, conceded defeat on Sunday. Ahead of the election, anger mounted against the ruling New Patriotic Party over the government's handling of Ghana's economic crisis. Mahama was previously president of Ghana between 2012 and 2017. His campaign largely appealed to Ghana's young voters as he vowed to reset Ghana. In New York, a judge on Friday dismissed the most serious charge of second-degree manslaughter against a white former U.S. Marine who choked black street performer Jordan Neely to death on a subway last May. The ruling clears the way for the jury to consider the lesser charge of criminally negligent homicide against Daniel Penny, who held Neely in a chokehold until he died. This is Shavona Newsom co-founder of the Black Lives Matter New York chapter.
No matter the expert witnesses, no matter the people yelling on that train that day to let Jordan go, you will kill him. They will not find a white man guilty of killing a black man in modern-day America. This is no different than Jim Crow.
If convicted under the lesser charge, Penny faces up to 4 years in prison. Neely, a 30-year-old beloved street performer, was unhoused and hungry and crying out for help when the ex-Marine attacked him. Neely was well known to New Yorkers and tourists as a talented Michael Jackson impersonator. In Indiana, 2 Indianapolis police officers have been acquitted in the 2022 killing of Herman Whitfield, an award-winning African-American piano virtuoso who died after the officers repeatedly tasered him, handcuffed, and pinned him to the ground as he cried out he couldn't breathe. The jury found Indianapolis police officers Adam Ahmed and Steven Sanchez not guilty on all counts of involuntary manslaughter, reckless homicide, and battery. In April 2022, Whitfield's parents called 911 to ask for help as their son experienced a mental health crisis in their home. The officers found Whitfield without clothes on, bleeding from the mouth. Instead of helping him, they attacked the 39-year-old with a stun gun and restrained him. Whitfield's death was later ruled a homicide. And Pope Francis has repeated his call for a ceasefire in Gaza. On Saturday, the Pope unveiled this year's nativity scene at the Vatican. It portrays baby Jesus in a crib lined with a Palestinian keffiyeh. At the ceremony, a top Palestinian official praised the Pope for his, quote, ongoing efforts to end the genocide in Gaza and his steadfast support for the Palestinian cause, unquote. Over the weekend, Pope Francis also called on U.S. authorities to commute the sentences of prisoners on death row. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman.